Hello, everyone, and welcome back to no longer Wifey Wednesday.
Thank goodness.
You've been also outspoken. A lot of people feel really strongly about that title. So, our new working title, thanks to my beautiful wife here, who is kind of going through a whole list of possibilities, is Life and Love Elevated.
Elevated because we are coming at you from elevation. We're at about 7,800 feet here.
That's correct.
But also elevated, like hopefully taking ideas, concepts, science, research, love to the next level.
Love that. Elevated. So, hey,
Yes.
Today's topic is one of our very favorite topics. And I think this is something for people who watch the Treehouse Talks. This is something that will not be new to you. But I think it's going to be interesting because we are so inspired by the idea of spirituality and how spirituality plays a significant role in relationships.
Yeah, and when you brought it up, I think it's great that you said it's our favorite subject. I love spirituality. As a subject, yes, it's fascinating, but it's not like, I wouldn't say, oh, my favorite subject is. But when you were sharing ideas with me, and it really comes back to spirituality as it pertains to personal growth, and how with that growth, how it affects relationships. And did I ever tell you that story? So, shocker, I was in a relationship before I met James, vice versa. Anyway, great person. And at that time, I was really in my spirituality discovery zone, or just blossoming with that within myself. And this person just didn't like the word. So I'm wondering, does the word itself, spirituality, trigger you? Or what does it bring up for you? For me, it was just like I was really interested in personal growth, and I have always loved all different kinds of spiritual practices, teachings from all the great world religions, but even deeper than that, taking it out of religious dogma and rules to kind of discovering what resonates within.
Yeah, I mean, I love all of that for so many reasons, sweetheart.
But not the ex. Probably.
I don't love your ex. I love your ex for letting your...
The next. Thank you. Next.
Oh my gosh. Hey, so, and for many people, part of the Treehouse community, they're going to love Lisa Miller's work. We've talked a lot about Lisa Miller. She's a doctor from Columbia. She started a whole branch within Columbia in their medical school all about spirituality. And to your point, sweetie, she literally describes spirituality as personal growth. Anything that we do to evolve ourselves. Ritual are a big part of her whole research. You know, whether it be meditation, whether it be exercise, whether it be hanging out in podcasts and doing media that helps you to evolve as a person. All of that, she says, is under the umbrella of spirituality. And interesting enough, her research and how it applies to relationships, I think just to kind of lay the foundation, she says it's critical for all human beings to have rituals in their life that they plug into, religiously practice, because when we do this, it facilitates a level of confidence, a level of self-awareness we talked about last week. And it's absolutely critical in relationships, because if we're not in the space of growth, and if we're not continuing to evolve as people, I'm going to say it in a way that hopefully doesn't become offensive, but let's face it, when we're in that dating phase with someone new, we tend to be really interesting, right? We're just interesting people. We're all the new discovery. We're sharing all of our best selves. And then we get a relationship, and then we discover all of the things that, aren't necessarily that interesting. And it can be a time when judgment comes up and we start to feel like, I wonder if this is my person. All of that is integrated into the idea that every single one of us gets an opportunity every single day to be a student of the things that make us come alive. And then we do that in relationship. That's how this interesting energy comes up. And interesting is part of intimacy. Interesting is part of attraction. Interesting is part of a willingness to want to stay in a relationship because you're feeling at a neurochemical, physiological, emotional level, this is a person I want to be around because they help to facilitate my desire to grow too.
Absolutely. And I think it's about finding meaning and purpose in your life. When I think of spirituality, I think of seeking And I do relate that to like a power greater than myself, so that I may not have all the answers right here, right now within myself, but knowing that they are there and kind of calling on a higher power and accessing those spots within myself, whether it's through meditation. We talk a lot about our morning walk kind of being our church in the woods, because we really find so much meaning and connection in that process and in that ritual. So I do love all of that. And I was, when you were just talking, I was getting this great flashback of being the passenger in your Westphalia hippie bus where we did our honeymoon. And one of our first dates, that first weekend of dating, was we went to, I'll call it church, but it was really the Spiritual Enrichment Center led by Mary Manna Morrissey. And this was outside of Portland, Oregon. And, James you had this rich background in Buddhism and Buddhist practices and Sufism, and you'd lived in spiritual community.
Also a former altar boy, so deep Catholic roots as well. So been through a lot of different religious experiences.
Yeah, and same, coming from like a Jewish Episcopal raising, and I always just loved all of it, all of the study in that, and going to like a Methodist church with the neighbor, and then being introduced to Unity Church, which kind of resonated deeply with me because it pulled in a lot of religions, but more spirituality. And so then fast forward to our first date weekend, and here we are, you're driving me in the hippie bus to Living Enrichment Center. And
what a catch I was. My hippie bus. Did we run out of gas?
Well, I don't want to talk about that part. Maybe. But that became a big part of our connection. And many of you who know our love story, we kind of fast-tracked the relationship from dating to engagement and marriage all within a year, which is
like
awesome.
Literally, wasn't it more like 9 months?
Yeah, I think so. And now here we are, almost 31 years married later. So it did work for us. But really, everything was rooted in spirituality. I remember that with our vows, actually, that was what we committed to, our own personal growth. In order to grow as a couple, that we sort of promised or vowed to work on our own spiritual growth.
I'm so grateful you brought that up for so many reasons, but not the least of which is that you're right. 9 months is a pretty fast track from going first date to getting married. And I think that when you said it, honey, it really hit me. And not like I didn't think about this, but I think it just really hit me. That has to be one of the most important parts of why 31 years has been us, because we began spiritually. Our foundation was spiritual. We were both dedicated to a practice. We were driving a long ways when we didn't have a lot of gas money, and I had an old hippie bus. So everything was a trust walk at that time, but there we were packing up our bus and driving close to an hour to get to church, and then get to church. And when they passed around the basket, and you and I, knowing that groceries were also really, really important, and we didn't have an extra dollar. And remember the story when Mary literally said to the entire church, she said, listen, I'm going to ask all of you to really think about the trust that you have in your spiritual path and the trust that you have in God. And I'm going to let everyone decide whether or not making an investment in that trust is something you'd be willing to do.
Yeah, and that was when the Enrichment Center had moved to a new location, and we were trying to fortify and build this beautiful campus, because we had been meeting in like movie theaters and different places, and we were just so committed. And so they were offering, you could buy a chair in the sanctuary, and it would have a little plate with your donated by names on it. And it was $500, which
like for us, oh my gosh.
That was like almost a rent payment for us. And we were already maxing on student loan debt, the whole 9 yards, but it was such a yes for both of us to commit to that level. And we're not suggesting that to be spiritual, you need to give all your money away or invest. This is just what worked for us. And it was like we were taking a stand for a relationship, for our commitment to our personal growth, to our spiritual community. And, we never regretted that decision.
Ever. No, there was never buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
It was really about a testimonial to what we wanted to really be about. And I think for today's talk, one of the things I would love for us to really help people to, have an understanding of where you are in a relationship. You're presently looking for a relationship. You're presently in a relationship. Maybe it's 10, 20, 30 plus years. Here's the thing that I think is really interesting as we've been pouring through the research to get ready for today's talk. You look at how important it is for people, whether you're single, in a relationship, in a community, how important it is to our mental and emotional well-being to have a spiritual practice, whether it is prayer, whether it is meditation, whether it's walking in the woods, whatever it is. There's this really interesting study that was done on how any ritual, first thing in the morning, is an upward spiral experience that makes you a person who can confidently be in community, whether it's with a lot of people or a person. And this idea goes into something very interesting. There's a very powerful thing that happens when we have a practice. And that practice can be anything that really does further our commitment to self-care in its relationship to addiction, depression, and anxiety. And I really want this to hit today because a lot of us are going through a lot of stuff right now. A lot of us may have partners who are going through a lot of stuff right now. And it's really important that no matter where you are in this experience, maybe you're doing really, really well and your partner's doing well, but there's often time in our life where we're going to know people who aren't. And if we can really tell people, and not necessarily tell them, hey, you need to be doing this, but I'm a big believer that you convince by your presence. The Dalai Lama once said, my love is my religion, kindness is my religion, and I convince in my religion by how I show up. It is my actions that speak so much more louder than my words. So when we are facilitating self-care and how it impacts our mental, emotional well-being, our ability to steer clear of addiction, our ability to actually help to navigate and find healthy community, all of this is connected to spirituality.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where to go from there because you said it all. But I was just thinking again when you were talking about starting off your day that way, and I was thinking about finding meaning and purpose in whatever it is that you do. I know there were times when I have felt put on the spot, like if someone's like, well, what is your purpose? What's your life purpose? And it's like, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or maybe it's this, or if you're a parent, sometimes you're like, oh, it's my kids. But kids are amazing. It's some of the greatest work we've done together is raise children, and wouldn't trade that for the world. But that's not like my sole purpose, I would say. So when you are, say you're looking for a friend or soulmate, if you just see someone, we've all maybe said, oh, that person's just lost. And what it is coming back to yourself. Even if it's self-reflection, it's journaling, it's getting on a bike, it's walking in the woods, it's meditating. And I think that's how you find your way back to yourself. And by finding your way back to yourself, you find purpose, you find personal growth, and that makes you attractive to others as friends, as lovers, as partners. At every level of your life, whether that's business, whether it's mothering, parenting, teaching, connecting, it's all part of spirituality, I would say. And it starts with that self-reflection, that finding meaning and purpose first with yourself and with the higher power, and being intentional about it, taking time to actually focus on it.
I think you touched on a couple of things without saying it overtly, honey, and I think that's really something I've always been so amazed, inspired by your ability to really, really make sure that you have your time. And in a relationship, as a busy mom, as a doctor, and all the things that you are doing, I've always marveled and been so proud of the way that you've done this. You are so great at making sure that your spiritual practice for yourself is absolute non-negotiable. And you always make time to have our couples relationship spiritual practice, our walk, the things that we do at night, the way in which we always are making sure that both parts of those practices are engaged. And I think for anyone who's in a relationship right now, we've maybe been in a time some go, oh my gosh, I lost myself in that relationship.
Oh, yeah.
People will say that. That's almost like a cliche but it's also really sobering, right? When we've been in a relationship where all the things that we used to do for ourselves that brought us joy, that brought us peace, that brought us purpose, and all of a sudden we got lost in the sexiness and the newness and all the awesomeness of a new relationship. And we're wondering that maybe 6, 8, 12 months later, we're going, oh my gosh, why am I not feeling good about myself? Why am I so codependent on this other person? Well, this is such a big part, and it doesn't have to happen only in the beginning. This is something where you're finding yourself maybe years into your relationship. It's very comfortable, but you're going, I've lost myself still, and I need to find my way back to myself. Well, this goes back again to Lisa Miller's research and countless other people who've studied the power of self-care as a spiritual practice, self-awareness as a way in which we bring ritual into our life, and how that anchors us in confidence, a sense of self-compassion and empathy, and all the acceptance that's necessary to be in a functional, beautiful, highly elevated relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's well said. And I don't really have more to add to that. I was thinking, what are some steps or suggestions if people are like, I don't even know where to start? Is there some supplement I could take? Is there something I can eat? But where do you think would be a great place to start if people feel a long way away or they need to find their way back to where they were?
I think if you're in a relationship, it's having that honest dialogue with your person. Let's start with that and really kind of test out where people are in relationship. Because I think a big part of what makes relationship works, and we've talked a ton about oxytocin, but oxytocin is the intimacy hormone as much as it's a trust hormone. And a lot of this happens in how it is that we facilitate shared mission and shared values. So sitting down with your bestie, your person, your lover, and saying, how are you feeling about our connection? How are you feeling about your personal growth? How are you feeling about your self-evolution? And beginning that in a place that's hopefully safe to open up that dialogue.
I agree and sort of disagree,
Okay.
I would say, like healthfully, because this is really about self-reflection. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to rely on you, which I have, I'm sure, a lot in the past, to fix me, to find my spirituality. I think it's important in relationship for sure to be like, hey, are we on the same page? Am I like growing and changing this way and you're growing and changing that way? Like right. We want to hopefully be together on this path, but a lot of times it's inevitable that people find different paths that resonate. But it's not like me going to you like, hey, is it okay if I explore this part of myself or whatever? Or I just let you know, hey, this is really calling me and I want to deepen my understanding, my commitment, my process. I think of even last summer when I went on a spiritual pilgrimage and you were totally supportive. It wasn't like you had to go with me, right? It was something really calling me. So I think, yes, it's like talking about it with your partner, but not in a way that's like, hey, are we like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to say, like, I don't think it's about finding permission from your partner to do this discovery process. It's really a work in progress for self, and then keeping the communication open with your partner, and that hopefully you're on the same page, because I know that's what brought us together in the first place was spirituality. So we already had that understanding of one another and our journeys. But if you didn't have that in the first place, it could be interesting.
Yeah.
People aren't growing together.
Yeah, well said, honey. And I think the thing that, as I was listening to you, the thing that came up for me a lot was how much of what spirituality or this idea of growth, personal evolution, always comes back to some of the really powerful science from Kristen Neff on how this is one of the greatest foundations of self-compassion, but also compassion for everyone we have in our life. Because people grow at different rates and people have different interests in how their growth will happen. And I think that's an interesting part of how compassion in all relationships, where acceptance and openness and empathy and really vulnerability, my goodness. I mean, this is a vulnerable topic, right? Because we're really bearing our heart, we're bearing our soul, and we're putting ourselves out there and saying, I'm working on myself. Mm-hmm. And I hope this is something that I'm going to be feeling trusted in, because it's going to help me to be that much better of a version of myself that I want to be for myself. And yes, and in relationship, that same version hopefully is going to be an augmenting force for all the things we want to be in our marriages, in our partnerships, in our community. So there's so many beautiful side effects of doing this type of work, but I think it really does come down to a level of self-trust and an awareness about where we are on the continuum, and knowing the work is never over. And I find myself using that word work sometimes and going, it sounds heavy. But it's not heavy work. It's like the purpose behind rolling up your sleeves, opening your heart, and digging into what can be the most satisfying, one of the most deeply fulfilling things we'll ever do, which is to continually become the version of ourselves that makes us feel that much more loving, that much more empowered, that much more inspired, that much more peaceful, that much more purposeful, and that much more of a beneficial presence on the planet.
Awesome. Well, I think that's basically all I wanted to share about the subject today. If I come full circle, and if you're thinking, why'd she bring up that ex-boyfriend? It was because, at the very beginning, it was because I remember when I was going to a more spiritual church, he didn't like the word spirituality. Did I say that at the beginning?
Did.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to come back to, like, it's not a bad word. It's a beautiful word. And it really comes back to purpose, meaning, reflection, and personal growth. And in doing that work, it's good work. It's great work. And I love doing it with you. I think it's the best work of my life, and that we can do it together is amazing.
I love you so much. That's the stuff that gets me every time. So we can't wait to see your comments. I think everyone has a personal relationship with this subject today. I hope it resonates deeply with you, that you walk away from our time together today and feel drawn to deepen your understanding of what makes you come alive. And, you know, the idea of life and love elevated, or elevated life and love, I think this really is the best title. Unless you guys go, you know what, that title doesn't work either. It's better than Wifey Wednesday though, isn't it? And but hopefully this is the kind of work that we all get a chance to do together. And so grateful to do it alongside of you, honey. You've changed my life. You transformed the way I look at everything. Thank God for you. Thank God for you.
And you.
Have a beautiful afternoon. Peace and blessings. Bye for now.